pasuk in Yirmiyahu, uh, two, 2 years before Nebuchadnezzar is going to throw all the Jews into Babylonia. Yirmiyahu suggested buying property as a sign of faith in God that will come back. And he said, make sure you have your paperwork in order because we're going to get kicked out in 2 years. So the Gemara has a Havamina that means that if they had been 3 years, they wouldn't need paperwork, and that's how we get a chasaka. So the Gemara concludes there, Omer le Abaya. Abaya says, Dilma hasam eitza taiva kamashmalan. Maybe all that is a suggestion, a nice thing to do. Land prices are down. The country's in crisis. You can get a bunch of properties at a great price. So chop them up, but make sure you have your paperwork because 70 years is a long time. And turn the page. If you don't say, it's simply a suggestion, it's not a halachic statement. Banu batim v'shevu netuo ganas v'achlo al peiron. Why did he go on to say, but when you get to Babylonia, make sure you buy houses and establish farms and settle and have the ground agriculture activity so you can earn a living and eat the fruit. So it's a series of aces. Ella hachinami eitza tova kamashmal. And so he was simply telling them, this is how we should behave. Show faith in God by buying land in Israel, and then don't be homeless when you get to Babel. Build a house, acquire land, and you're going to be there 70 years. It's a long time. Now, Teda, you should know, Dixiv, that Yirmiyahu frequently gave good advice, because regarding the documentation he suggested you maintain to prove you own land when we come back, make sure you put these documents in secure storage in containers made of earthenware, so they'll survive for the 70-year period. Ella Rava says, Shata Kamaisa Machil Inish. All right, he says that the 3 years is a practical matter, because the first year or the first agricultural season that somebody is occupying your land, you'll say, I got plenty of time. Nish gefährlich, let him farm there. I'll go to court later. Tarte machil. The second year, I'll also be given mechila. I'll let him farm there. Tlas lo machil. But into the third year already, and he's not moving out. I've got a little agita. I'm going to go to court, and therefore, by the end of the third year, he will have made a macha. He would have complained if it wasn't a legitimate sale. So Gemara says, Amalei Abaya Elamiata Ki Hadra Ara. If that's the case, if he was Michael, then let him reclaim the land after 3 years without submitting a claim for the produce the wheat growing on that field. Tahader labad pelepere, let him claim the land, but let the man who bought fertilizer, who plowed the field, who watered the field, who weeded the field, let him keep the pay rice. Alma Omar Rav Nachman. So why did Rav Nachman paskin hadra ara v'hadre pere? When the real owner kicks a squatter off his land, he gets the land back, and he gets any improvements or any produce that's growing when he reclaims the land. So he modifies this idea of, that Abaya put forward. El Rava suggests Shata Kamaisa Lom Kapid Inish. The first year that the guy is a squatter, he doesn't complain to court. Tarte lo kapid. The second year, he's not makpid. He doesn't complain to court. Tlasa kapid. By the third year, he does go to court and complain, and his neglecting to do so is a simon that the acquisition was valid. That's what he says. So Abaya doesn't like that. Omerle Abaya says to Rava Elamiyato, if you say that's what a chazaka is, that it would take 3 years before the guy gets around to complaining. What about people who are genetic complainers? People who complain constantly. And you can't say he had plenty of time, he's waiting till the statute of limitations runs out. There are people, if you so much as step on a corner of their property, they have a million no trespassing signs and they have barbed wire fences. And the minute your foot touches their property, klaxons go off and they're in court. What about such a person? Amalei Abaya Elamiyato, according to that Kagan, Kane Debe Bar Eliashev. What about the people in the Bar Eliashev family? The Kapte Afilo Amanda Khalif Amatzra Didohu, who immediately make a complaint as soon as somebody touches the border of his property, he's in court. So would you say if these people sue every single person that comes near their property within 2 minutes of them touching the border, what if he doesn't? What if he doesn't complain for a while? Would you say that person has an instant chazaka? Because if normal people, you would give them 3 years, because normal people dray it out and don't go to court yet. Somebody who's in court every 5 minutes, do we say that his interloper has an instant chazaka? And if you say, that if you could prove this guy sues everybody anytime anybody offends him, if his lack of bringing such a suit means you had a right, imkain nosata devarecha l'shiyurin. So if that's the case, then the court would have to examine every single case and say, let's see, Schwartz usually waits a year before he's angry enough, so we'll give a year chazaka, and so on. So in other words, unless you have a fixed number, you open the court system to many, many unnecessary and unpleasant complications. Ella, Rava. So rather, Rava has a new idea. Shata kamaisa demizdahir inish bishtare. Normally, you made a big acquisition like a farm. You file your deed and you'd know exactly where it is. You'd keep it close to hand. Tarte v'tlas mezdaher, and after 2 or 3 years, you still have it accurately and knowingly where it is on file. Tvei lo mazdaher, like America, but after 3 years, you're not so sure where it is anymore. It's like American tax returns. Everybody has to have their tax returns for a block of years on file, but after that term is up, you purge your files and you throw away the old tax returns. Similarly, within a 3-year period, the guy's going to have the deed close at hand. But after 3 years, he figures, I haven't had any lawsuits. It's not such a big deal. And he puts it into the cold storage place and doesn't know exactly where it is. So that's the basis of the 3 years. So Amalei Abaya says Alamayata, if that's your suggestion, Macho shelo b'fanav lo tahave macho. What about the rule we have? If the previous owner and possible current owner, in other words, he is arguing he never sold it, goes to court, and he doesn't, and the other, he doesn't send the hazmana to the squatter. The halacha is that's according to this that it shouldn't be, he says, a valid protest. You should have to have the guy you're suing in court with you to Omerle, because if not, the guy who was the squatter could say, "E machis apoy have mizdaharna b'shtarai." If you protested and I was there, I'd have come up with the star, and I'd have proven I'm the owner. So if my absence from court disadvantaged me, and now the court's going to rule in your favor, that's not fair. So, but we already learned that he doesn't have to be there, and we're going to restate that rationale. The Omarle, the original owner, can reply to the squatter, Chavare Isle, your friend has a friend. Chavre Isle, Chavre de Chavre Isle, and your friend's friend has a friend. In other words, the word will filter back to you that the old owner brought a court case, and you'll have plenty of time to show up in court with the star. So the fact that you ignored the what's it called, the chatter around the coffee pot, it's your own darn fault. So the Gemara, and that ends the discussion of the 3 years, and it pretty much seems that the bull is the paradigm. Amar Rav Humna, Shlosh Shanim Sha'amr, when we talk about this 3 years, Ahu Achalon Ritzufos, that only holds, we said this before, if the current occupant makes complete and total use on a continuing basis of the property. So my Kamashmal, and why does Rav Huna stress that? Tanina, we learned that in the Mishnah. Chazaka and shalosh shana miyom liyom. That the 3-year chazaka, you have to be there day after day. You have to utilize the property completely. Ma'odatema, what might you have suggested? Miyom l'layom la'afuke miku to'os. That means that it has to be, yom liyom could be in this context like ace la ace. So if you move into a property in Kislev, maybe those months don't count until Tishrei, and you have to be there 3 actual calendar years. That might be a suggestion. But the reality is, if the 3 years are scattered, that means 1, 3, and 5. And we'll discuss that in a minute. In other words, you were there the first year, but for valid reasons, you did not demonstrate use of the property in 2. You demonstrated you were publicly plowing and planting and harvesting in 3. 4 was an off year, and 5 was again, you were very publicly using the land. That should be still a valid chazaka, kamash malan. So Rav Huna says, no, you have to be 1, 2, 3. You can't be 1, 3, 5.
Shemitah can't be in the middle.
I'm sorry?
You can't have Shemitah.
We're not discussing Shemitah. But what we are discussing, we'll get to it right now. We know in modern agriculture, we have what we call crop rotation. In earlier times, they would allow the land to go fallow. In other words, if a piece of land starts becoming less productive, you could increase the productivity of that land by not plowing, letting weeds or something grow, plow them under, and that refertilizes and renews the land. So in such a community, they would indeed farm 1, 3, and 5 and let 2 and 4 remain fallow. So what if I buy land in such a place? Rav Huna, Rav Chama says that Rav Huna would agree. Ba'asre demovre ba'agage. That if it's a community where all the farmers leave the land fallow on 2 and 4, that 1, 3, 5 would be a valid chazaka. So the Gemara says, of course, pshita, that's absolutely obvious. What? No, nobody would even question that. So why does Rav Chama even bring it up? Lo tzricha, we need Rav Chama's comment. The ika demover, the ika lo demover. There are areas where many farmers use a fallow year cycle, but other farmers do not. So what happens if you buy a farm in such a place? Okay. Ha Gavra Movra, the new owner believes in a crop rotation system. Mahudatema, what would you say? Omerle, the original owner would argue. Isa if you really do own that land, a boilach lemizra. You should, you know the rules of chazaka, you should have planted in year 2 anyway. Okay? So Kamash Malan, so Rav Chama says that if the other farms surrounding his farm, he is allowed to follow the community practice, for sure if everybody does it, and even if a significant number of neighbors do it. Okay, the Omar lay, because the guy who the squatter could say, Chada ara bekule, but a bagalomatzino lintar. Since none of the other farms around me are being used this year, it's ridiculous to require me to hire workers and figure out how to get them back and forth. They can't stay in sukkahs out on the field because there's nobody else that'd be open to list them. So that's no good. I mean, in other words, it's impractical for me to farm in a year when nobody else is farming. There's not going to be any garon. It's going to be very difficult. Inami, or another possibility, he would say, Bahachi nichali, I prefer the crop rotation method, leaving it fallow every other year, the avda tvei, because doing so means I will, at the end of 3 years, where I farmed 1, 3, and 5, I will have generated more grain in total than I would have if I farmed 1, 2, 3. So it's 4, 5. So it's to my advantage fiscally to let it lie fallow, and that's why I do it. And you can't make me farm a year to maintain a chazaka. Okay. Tanan, we had, going back to the Mishnah, now we're going to challenge Rav Huna. Tanan, chazaka batim, when it comes to houses, it's 3 years meisleis. Ha batim divivima yada v'leila lo yada. Now, in a day, they don't have street lamps. How do I know that he was in the house at night? It could, in the daytime, I see him going in and out. I see him pick up the newspaper in the morning. I see him weed the garden. He's visible. But at night, how do I know he's there? So the Gemara says, Omar Abaya, man mashid abatim, who normally, if you want to know if a house is occupied, what do you normally do? Shivve, you go and you ask the neighbors, does anybody live there? Shivve, Meda, Yoda, B'yoma, B'layla. Normally, the neighbor. What? Yeah, but how do you know somebody's in the apartment? If you walk down the catwalk, pretend there were no light bulbs. If you walk down the catwalk, how do you know which apartments are occupied, which not? Exactly. That's what the Gemara's question. If you're required to be there nonstop, constantly, how does a guy demonstrate he's there at night? So the Gemara says you check with the neighbors, okay? And Shivave made a yade biyuma v'layla. Normally, the neighbors know you went in at night. They saw smoke from the chimney from cooking. They saw you lock the door. In other words, neighbors become aware of which apartments are occupied or which buildings are occupied, which are not. That was one suggestion. Rava Omer Kegon to Asu Beitrei. Why? Let's create a case where it's a condominium, there's an upstairs and a downstairs, or two unrelated males, because they're going to be witnesses. So they have to be unrelated males, purchase a property together, and they could go to court and testify that they were there at night. Okay, Kigun da Asu Beitrei, two men, the Amre Anan Agrinan Mine, we rented the house from Mr. Schwartz, who told us he owns it. He bought it from Abramowitz. And Vidarinan Bey Tlashnin Biyamama Belilia. And we were there day and night. At least one of us was in the building all the time. Okay? So these guys, since the purchaser is getting rent from them, that's the maximum use of the property. He's generating income from it. And they can testify we were always there. So, but that's a little bit problematic. Omar Le Rav Yemar, Rav Ashi, Rav Yemar complains. Hani Negin Adaitu Sanhain. These guys are Nageya Bedavar. They don't want to get kicked out. If the old owner repossesses, they're going to be thrown out. So it's to their best interest to testify that they are paying money for occupying the property to the owner. If they don't say that they were there all the time, the previous owner would be able to repossess. So Amrinon, we would say to these guys, Zilu havu le agar bate lahai. You should have been paying rent to Abramowitz. He never really sold it to Schwartz. So that's the challenge to that statement. Amalei, Rav Ashi replies, Dayane de Shvile Hechi Danye. Only an idiotic judge would throw these testimony out. Okay? Milo Askinan, aren't we? All right, you have to know, in those days, it was normal to rent property for a block of time and then to pay the total rent at the end of the lease. That was the minhag. So, Kevan de Nikite Agerbate, since they haven't paid their rent yet, they're not Nagaya B'Davar. Well, they're not at risk of being thrown out. So they are saying to the court, Amre Laman Leisvai. Who are we supposed to give this money to? So now the renters don't care about who is the actual owner. They'll give the money to whoever the court determines is the real owner. So they're no longer Nogea B'Davar, and they can say we've been there constantly. So we see from that, and we see from the Mishnah, that constant possession and utilization is required to create a chazaka. Omer Marzutra, Itoen, if the original owner makes a complaint, the Omer, Lesutre Sahade, Laas Hudele. Let the original owner says he claims he owns it. Let two people come and testify he's been there all the time and working all the time. The door be flashne that he was there day and night for the last 3 years. So now the ta'ante taina. So if the previous owner asks that the current occupier prove that he's been there all the time, that's valid. And now we're going to do some qualifications here. Umoide Rav Zutra, but Rav Zutra agrees. Baruchlin hamachazirin ba'arayas. The owner of the property, the original owner, his parnasa is to be an itinerant peddler. So he leaves at Sukkot and he goes all around selling his wares, comes back maybe at Pesach and stays home for a week and reestablishes his inventory, and then it's gone again. The Afagaf Ta'en, even though the original owner can't say, because he's not there. I saw the place empty from time to time. The court accepts his claim, even though he can't argue. I saw that the guy wasn't there because he wasn't there. Umurda Rav Huna, and Rav Huna says, but another qualification. But the shopkeepers in Mechuzah, okay, Diliyamama Avida, they have their stores open in the daytime. Okay, Lelelia Lo Avidna. They're not there at night. I mean, that's the derech of a store, except 7-Eleven, you're not open 24/7. You open when the customers are ready to come and buy, and then you shop, lock up this store, you go home. So if you are claimed you bought the store from Keller, you don't have to be there at night because stores are different. The store is a daytime business, and you get 100% of the benefits of operating the store by being open 9 to 7 or whatever your hours are. You don't have to be there at night. Yes.
Farming also.
No, farming, you have a watchman so the thieves don't come and steal your stuff. Farming is a 24/7 business. That's the assumption. And certainly owning a house. But even with farming, we said if you get 3 crops, that's enough. But owning a house that is a dira that people live in, to have full use of your dira, you have to be there 24/7, or at least mostly. I mean, if you were to buy a summer house in the Catskills, you couldn't have a chazaka because it's not occupied for 10 months. What?
That you live in.
Yeah.
You go to work.
That's so you're using, but your wife is home. They didn't have two away jobs. The guy farmed and the woman cooked. No, I never said that. I said a woman can't be an aide. A woman can't testify. I didn't say women can't count. My wife is a better mathematician than I am. All right, let's go weiter. So, Rami Bar Chama Varav Ukva Bar Chama, the two Chama brothers, Zivun Hahi Amsa, they purchased jointly a slave girl, Bahade Adade, and they each had 50% ownership of the slave girl. Mar Ish Tamish Bo Rishona Shlishi Surchamishis. Rami had the use of the girl the whole first year, the whole third year, and the whole fifth year. Okay? And his brother, Ukva Mar Ishtameshba, I'm sorry, I skipped. Omar Ishtameshba Shniya Revi'is V'chishis. And his brother, Ukva, had her year 2, year 4, and year 6. Okay? So, Nafik Aroror Alave, the man who sold them the slave, went to court and said, they never paid me. I want her back. And they say, we have a chazaka. Also, Lakaimi to Rava, they went. Everybody went to Rava. Omar Le Rava asked the brothers, "My time of viditu hachi. Why did you make this? Keep her a year deal between yourselves. Ki hechi delo tachazku ahadade. Are you afraid that your brother's not trustworthy? So if one brother had her 1, 2, and 3, he'd have a chazaka, and the other brother would lose his half. So you were afraid of that. So you did 1, 3, 5, 2, 4, 6. So neither of you could claim against the other. Is that why you did that? Ki hechi lididichu lo havi chazaka. So the net result of your scheme is neither of you have a chazaka against the other. La alma nami lo have chazaka. So, but neither of you had her for 3 continuous years, so you do not have a chazaka against the claimant either. By protecting yourself from your brother, you disadvantaged yourself vis-a-vis the previous owner. V'lo amran ela delo kasuv itra. But the reason Rava paskin that way is because the two brothers did not have a written contract between them. Okay? That I get her 1, 3, 5, you get her 2, 4, 6. If they had a written aval kasav itra, if they had a written agreement of the distribution of her service, Kola Islay, everybody would know about it, and then they would together have a chazaka against the previous owner. Okay. We're now going to do a whole string. We've started, and we're going to continue with a whole string of cases, each of which amplifies or explains or introduces an element of the rules of chazaka. Amarava achla kula chutz mebeis rova. I buy 1,000-acre farm, but one corner of it is for one reason or another not arable. So it's rocky or it's swampy. So I don't farm that corner. Okay? So Amar Rava Achla Kula Chutz Mi Beis Rova. 1/4 of a beiseya he did not use, a kav worth of yield. Kana Kula Chutz Mi Beis Rova. Is his hazaka only applicable to everything but the corner, because he didn't utilize the corner. And Rava says, yes, that would be the rule if the previous owner came and complained. You didn't use that corner, you have to give that back. Now we're going to qualify that. Omer Rav Huna Bereda Rav Yoshua Lo Amran Ela Dvar Zuriyahu. That rule, that unless you use it all, some of it is subject to repossession, only applies if it's usable for farming. But Avalav Bazriyahu, if it's not usable for farming, Kanele Agavara, then it's considered that he acquired that corner by acquiring. You can get a car by buying a garage, and the car the car is agav. So you have a chazaka on everything arrogable, then you have a chazaka agav on the non-usable spot. Okay. Now, but they're going to qualify that too. Maskif Rav Bibi Bar Abaya, Abaya's son Bibi has an argument on that. Ela miato, if you're going to say that since you couldn't plant there, it's totally useless. Dunma kama yikne. How do you buy a rocky piece of land? I purchased a rocky piece of land. I misplaced my deed. It's impossible to make a chazaka. So how does it work? Ella ukaime ba kavasa. So the fact is that nothing is useless. You could put animals there. You could put stakes in the ground and tie goats to the stakes and use the land that way. Or you could plant figs. And you could, when you dry the figs, you could spread them out on the rocks. So nothing is totally useless. Omishtacha ba pere. You could dry fruit in the sun on those rocks. Hachinami, similarly, when one piece of a large acquisition is not agrable, you can't grow food there. You could put animals there. Oinami mishtacha ba pere, dry fruit there. So he's challenging and he's saying the original owner could get that corner back. Okay, next case. Hahu gavra dehilechavre. One guy says to another, "My boys behind Besa. What are you doing in my house?" Okay. Amarle, he replies, Minach Zevinite. I bought it from you. V'achalis shtei chazaka. And I used it for the years that I need to have a chazaka. So go away and don't bother me. Amarle, the first guy says, Ana v'shchune Gave have. I was camping out in modern language. I was camping out in the basement. So you did not have total use of the property because I was in the basement. All right, literally, it's there. I was in an inner corner. Okay, so asu lakaime de Rav Huna. They went to Rav Huna for a psak. Amarle, Rav Huna replied, Zil borer achilosach. He said to the occupant, to the guy claiming the chazaka, prove it. Now, everybody here should have perked up because it violates a basic principle. Omer lo Rava says to Rav Nachman, Achidina, you can paskin like that? Hamoitze mechavaru alav haraya. The original owner wants it back. He's the one that should have to prove he was in the basement. He shouldn't make the occupier prove that he had use of the whole building. So you see that Reb Nachman and Rava disagree on who has to prove in this case. Urame, the Rava. But by looking at the next case, we'll see that Rava disagrees with himself. And Rami, the Reb Nachman, of the Reb Nachman, and Reb Nachman also disagrees with himself. The Amar Leila Chavre, one Mr. Schwartz says to Mr. Abramowitz, Kol Nichse de Be Bar Sisin Ma Mizavina Loch. I will sell you a piece of property called the Bar Sisin farm. Okay? Have Ahu Arab. Now, let's say the Bar Sisin farm is in Boca, and it's 1,000 acres, and I'm selling it to you so you can put up a housing development, right? However, Have Hu'ara the Have Mikre de Be Bar Sisin, but this owner has a small little piece of land up in Del Rey that the neighbors call the Bar Sisin spot place. Okay? Now, the deed simply said, I'm selling you the Bar Sisin property. Does that mean you bought just Boca, or does it mean you bought the piece up in Del Rey too? That's the case. Amarle halav de Be Bar Sisin he. The seller says that little spot in Del Rey I wasn't including when I sold you the Bar Sisin plot. The ek ruyehu de mikruye Rav Bar Sisin. It's just that the neighbors up there in Del Rey call that little piece the Sisin spot. But that's not part of the Bar Sisin property that is in our contract. Asula Kami to Reb Nachman. So Reb Nachman, the same Reb Nachman, who said that the occupier has to prove that he had it all. Ukma the Lokeach. He gave the Lokeach that little piece up in Del Rey. So Omerle Rava says to him, Dina Hachi, is that really the law? Hamotze Mecharev Olavaraya. That here, the case is he had a property in Boca, but they didn't give him yet the property in Del Rey. And the court awarded it to him simply because it was called Sisa. So he should have had to prove it's his, because the seller was still in possession of it. So in the first case, Reb Nachman paskin that the buyer had to prove it. And in the second case, Reb Nachman argued that the seller had to prove it. And in both cases, Rav challenged Reb Nachman. So it's a Tana on Reb Nachman, and Rava on Rava. And tune in tomorrow and we'll resolve it.
Wow. What a cliffhanger.
Yeah, should I tie Polly to the tracks?
Of course. Miss Polly.
No, I was talking about a parrot.
Oh,
Okay. Whose phone is this?
mine.
Oh, that's cute. You glued that on?
No, that was part of the cake.
Ah.
Little ring. Ring a ding ding.
Uh-huh.
Was there more than 1 million there today?
We had 12.
Wow.
We've been running 12.